don't worry about the recording aspect of it. Everything you do will be aggregated into the Menti. So, even a recording of this won't reveal you as you. So please do come with that honesty. And one of the things I want people to do, and we do this in the full session, is we say to people, okay, think about yourself at that critical point, that job interview for your dream job. Actually, where should you place your efforts? And a lot of the time people get very nervous about job interview questions and internal networking conversations. But actually, one of the main take homes that we'll get on the table right now is the conversation is just that tip of the iceberg. Actually, all the things about how you interview, how you come across are very important. But actually knowing yourself, knowing what you really want, knowing what your special skills are, knowing your brand, that's the stuff that is either going to help you get ahead or slow you down. And that's the purpose of today's 90 minutes, or about 80 now, is really just to walk through that. So we're going to do some brief walkthroughs. And if during today, what you can do, which would be great, is if you can take some of these little exercises and then do them in your own time at a little bit more length, you'll find that should give you a really clear view of where you're at and where you want to be, and hopefully get you ready in that 70% readiness state to start making some moves within your career, whatever that looks like for you. So we mentioned about doing some interactivity. We're going to use a tool called Mentimeter. Hopefully many of you are familiar with it. It's going to turn your smartphone into a voting pad and into an anonymous contribution writing pad. It's really good fun. If you go to www.menti.com, and if you can enter the code at the top of the screen, type a little greeting. So you maybe hello from, so for me, it'd be hello from Shenfield, and I'll just quickly do that. That's where I am in the country. And then it'd be great if we can get some answers on there. So we've got one from London, we've got one in Dorset, fantastic. Okay, all right, hopefully other folk are able to enter. So
my phone's decided not to work.
Okay.
Oh, we've got someone from Dublin. Hello from Dublin. Manchester,
fantastic.
Bristol.
Manchester, love Manchester.
Good. Costa Rica.
Brilliant.
Good heavens. Belgium.
I hope you're not on holiday if you're in Costa Rica. I hope you're working. High Wycombe. I went to school in High Wycombe. Fun fact. Someone in Worcester. Yesterday we had people from all over the place. And got someone from Poland. Amazing.
East London, Germany. Oh, what's the code, please? Hi, Adrian. It's 8752 3069. Let me pop that in the chat for you as well.
All right, we'll just give people another minute to just get on board with Menti. Now, what this means is if you want to spend some time away from your laptop, I would advise take a piece of paper with you if you want to dive into the kitchen, but you'll be able to follow the whole presentation now on your phone as well. So the slides will refresh on your phone. And if your battery's dying on your phone and you're worried about it, then you can open a web browser and go to that same address, menti.com, enter that same code if that ends up happening to you. So it's great that we seem to have loads of people on board. And before we get going, I just want to check in with people. Where are you in terms of career management? So if you think about somebody who is really at the top of their field, whatever it is, and they've got a plan to kind of roll forward and keep being amazing, they'd be answering 5, strongly agree on those. But if you're a bit lost, or maybe you're in a role that it feels like a bit of a dead end, you'd be answering more towards your 1s. And I'll put in my honest answers. Yesterday, my boss's boss was on the call. I haven't yet checked, so I do really love working at LHH, but it's good that these are anonymous because hopefully we can all feel comfortable putting our views forward. So let's have a look and see where
this is interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
See the results coming through. Wow.
So one of the things that's coming up, which I kind of expected is where we'd be, is it looks like roughly half the people on the call or our average is kind of halfway towards knowing what our dream role is. And we'll spend a bit of time thinking about what dream roles are and what they look like. And I would say, if you don't know what your dream role is yet, that doesn't matter.
No.
And I don't want people to feel at the end of this guilty or weird about, oh, I don't know what my dream role is. Maybe that makes your next action clear, which is to explore a little bit. So don't feel pressure. If you're somebody who answered 1 across the board, it's great that hopefully we can help you along. And a lot of people who are people who I might perceive as very successful, they still don't 100% know. And it's a chasing game, it's a searching game. Hopefully these three things it's been useful to check in on. Now, Kirsten, I know you and I do genuinely have chats about this. LHH is we really like working here. But maybe if I just chop off the last however long you've been at LHH, or a particular point in your career, and you can maybe reflect on a bit of your experience, maybe where you've been stronger in one of these or less strong.
So I think my dream role is probably, not surprisingly, it's probably changed over the years. I think I started off, had a very glamorous foray into the world of work, and was working for advertising agencies in Soho at the beginning of the century in the dot-com bubble. So that was, Mad Men feels like a bit of a live documentary, frankly, on some of that. And I think back then it would have been, I was going to run my own advertising agency one day. Things change, got married, had kids, you sort of realign what you want. And actually these days, I think my dream role is basically what Giles Corran does, which is he goes to restaurants, he eats lots of lovely food, and then gets to write about it. So that in a big, the big dream would basically going to be a travel writer. But the reality is, not going to pay the mortgage, so have to be a bit more realistic. But I think at times things shift, and I've had to flex and pivot. And I went back, funny enough, I went back to advertising when I was pregnant with my first child, and remember seeing all these, basically the me's of 10 years previously, and thinking, do you know what? I'm over that. I'm over that one now. Thanks all the same. Definitely out the other side. But I think my reflection on this is things change, and I think having that flexibility to pivot and move and have build up the transferable skills, so when you do move from X to Y via, I don't know, A, you go about learning the experiences rather than anything else.
Great, thanks, Kirsten. Really, and thanks for your honesty. One thing you will need to know about Kirsten is quite an honest person, which is partly why I was elated when I got paired with her. So it's just interesting, isn't it? And I reflect, there was a period of my time where I definitely had no idea what my dream role was, and I should have been thinking about it. So I have a black spot of about 3-4 years where I was drifting. So that's my reflection on this, just thinking back. Hopefully just going through this has helped you initially start that process of reflecting on your own career journey. Now, one thing I should say up front is, we talked about pressure. A lot of us get trapped in, I must just go for the promotion above me. And actually, if I think about a few people, if you think about a really prominent brain surgeon, that is a role that without a doubt is interesting, people respect it, well paid, get to be really skilled. It's a fantastic role. There is no brain surgeon in the world who hasn't spent a good length of time enriching themselves. And just because you're sat in a role, it doesn't matter if you're absorbing, if you're learning, if you're qualifying yourself further, if you're moving yourself forward, so long as you've got that clear end vision, it doesn't mean that you have to always be progressing to the next promotion within your given sphere or domain. So I just want everybody to be very clear on that key message up front as well, is there are many different types of moves that we make within our careers, and we're going to spend some time reflecting on those. And these are just a few key things that have to get on the table up front, because there's that myth out there of having to just get the next promotion. And one last thing that we'll get on the table early is the role that you play. And we talk about a partnership model here. And it's very easy to put pressure on yourself to think, well, I've got to do everything. I've got to do mentoring. I've got to do, I've got to do some networking. I've got to be awesome at understanding my company's process. Actually, I have to make sure that I get exposure. Actually, I have to make sure that I've lined up a coach. And you can put it all on yourself. And I would say there are some things you're responsible for. You're the only one who can set your goal. You're the only one who can make a true view of yourself. You might ask others to inform that view. But you're the only one who can do those things in the top right-hand corner. But please remember, do make use of your manager. Managers actually often quite like people who report to them, helping them progress and further their careers. And please do make use of the organisation that's there to help you. I know many of the 134 people on today will work in or around HR. You'll be aware of what's out there, but you would be astonished the amount of people who don't. And it might be tempting, if you're in HR and you're the helper, to think, it's all on me and I'm going to help myself and I'm all about helping others. but actually not using help that's around you. So one last key message before we really get rolling is please do use all the different parts of that partnership model. And hopefully today will help you think through what that is all about. Okay, so we're going to start looking at ourselves now. We're going to start having a bit of a reflect. And there's a brilliant book called The Career Helium Model. So I don't know how many of you have read Who Moved My Cheese. It was a pretty foundational read in terms of business change. And it's all told in follows a story. And Career Helium follows a similar sort of approach. And it's the story of somebody who goes on this journey, and they go into a mythical elevator. And really the metaphor is about rising. And some people rise up and they just kind of seem to effortlessly get to where they want to get to. And some people get stuck. And in this book, David Thompson identifies a few key things that can get in people's way of achievement, recognition, and reward. And those are your relationship with your manager, how well you set expectations of yourself and with those around you, so under-promising and over-delivering, or in avoiding over-promising, the profile that you've built up within the organization, how well you can network, so not just being well-known in your own little domain, but how well and widely you're known and by whom. And lastly, everyone might know you and everyone might like you, but there's some politics at play. Maybe you were seen to be helpful to somebody who a senior stakeholder didn't get on with. Maybe you were seen to be aligning yourself to some views that weren't helpful. And in the book, David Thompson really hits those on the head, and it's quite a fun, engaging book. If you have the time to read it, it's well worth a look. So what we're going to do is we're just kind of think about, what actually are we good at? If you think about those ranges, those things that we talked about, actually, am I good at? I'm working from the bottom up, but actually, am I really good at having a great rapport-based relationship with my manager who will trust me, want to sponsor me? How good am I at that? Am I somebody who sets expectations realistically? Have I built a strong profile within the company, or am I known a bit narrowly? And am I well known broadly? And do politics snare me, or am I quite good at knowing what's what? So just take a minute, because we haven't got time for everybody to sit and pause and read the book, but just take a minute to reflect on those. And Kirsten, again, don't feel obliged to talk about your LHH experience. I know we have LHH colleagues on the phone, but I don't know if you've got any views on when these have helped you up. And just while you do, I'll tell you one was a trap I fell into was Beringa involved lots of projects, and I was so bad at focusing just on what was in front of me on that project and making sure my boss liked me and the project team liked me. And I really took my eye off the ball off that broader focus. So that was my reflection when I looked through this, was actually that networking was my weaker link. I don't know if you've got a reflection you want to share, just while people are thinking through in their own way about that.
One thing, I suppose, the politics one is always an interesting one, and I think it depends on your role at any company at the time, and I suppose how close you are to that seat of power. So I'll step aside from that one. Networking across the company, that's something actually I've probably one of my strengths actually is not just here, but also LHH is part of a much larger network. And actually, it's only when you get to work on something different that you do get to go and meet other people, not just here in the UK, but actually globally as well. So that and taking advantage of that, actually, that's something that I've probably only really harnessed in maybe the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if this stuff comes naturally, it's one thing. But it's if it's an area of development, that's when you have to go and work that little bit harder at it.
Yeah, agree. Thanks, Kirsten. Really helpful. So typically more junior people, so if you're newer in your career, the things that will snare you will be those bottom two as we see them on the screen. So actually how well your boss thinks you're doing, are you setting those expectations? And that'll be enough if you conquer those two to get you rolling and get you started and get you starting to get known, and you can rely on your manager to maybe help you network a little bit and introduce people. And as you get more senior, you'll start to run into the weeds of politics. So have a reflect based on where you are now, but just bear in your mind that what got you where you are now, if you're a mid-level resource, what you got you here won't get you there. And you do need to start thinking about politics, who you know, reading those all company messages, being aware of who's saying what, and it will start to become more important. So one of those things we brushed over quickly. If you get a second, give that book a read, have a reflect on these when you've got a bit more time. That's the first of our lenses that we're going to look at. So we've looked overall at some industry best practice. And the reason we're starting to do this is to help us get towards what we call the career sweet spot. Now, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, and I got told, follow your dreams. And if you ask me in the 80s or 90s what that would have been, it would have been either professional football or rugby player, or maybe a Formula One driver. And there was no way I was ever going to be one of those. I just didn't have the natural talent, and I couldn't add enough value to a team to ever make it there. So I would say it's not, the advice isn't don't follow your dreams, it's follow your best, most realistic dream that will really, really add the most to you. And a great example of this would be, so I use a sporting analogy, and there are others out there, but Arsene Wenger, he's now retired from Arsenal, but he was the Arsenal manager for many years. He was quite an average footballer, but he had a huge, overwhelming passion for the sport. And he had a degree in economics, and he was a very statistical, analytical thinker. And he brought those two together and became one of the best football managers of all time. Another great example would be some of the engineers at places like DreamWorks, where they love the film and movie industry. They have technical skills, and they're able to operate at the top of their field. They have all the self-esteem of being at the top of the field. They're still in what they love, but they have all that respect and all the other things and self-respect that come with it. So rather than being failed actors or bored employees within a traditional IT organization, people in that kind of role, that's a real example of that sweet spot at play. So it's worth just thinking, and this is definitely one to reflect on more and offline, is that sweet spot between where your passions reside and where you add your greatest value. And we're going to do a bit of reflecting on that now, but just please do remember this little Venn diagram here. It's really, really important. In case if you've got any reflections on that, feel free to chuck them in, but we'll get moving on the kind of self-reflection in a minute.
I don't actually, although I was very recently, I've got a friend who's having I don't know what I want to do moment. So in fact, went through some of this with her and said, this is what I think you're good at, this is what she thinks she's good at, and then we found that bit in the middle. So it's, do it for yourself. You might use this actually within your teams if you're a people manager as well.
Yeah.
Just to help thinking about that stretch for others.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Kirsten. So we're going to look and apply several of these lenses now. And the first lens we're going to apply to ourselves. So we're going to look within. And during the course of today, we're going to look within, we're going to look back, we're going to look forward, and we'll start with looking within. We've got this quote from Carl Jung: who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And I want everybody to spend a tiny bit of time just reflecting on themselves and their motives. So if you think about that Venn diagram of the career sweet spot, it's really that what makes me tick question. So without naming it, what would your dream job give you? So don't give the job title. And I'll enter mine. I'll be a bit honest here, and you can judge me if you want. That's what I'm here for. And I'll go to the slide. And I tell you now, I had a difficult manager a few years ago, very difficult. And they made me feel about this bit. And one of the things I want my career to give me, which it does give me, which is great, is if I walked into a room with that manager and I said what I do, I'd want them to think, oh, I had that guy all wrong, actually. He's a smart guy and he's doing a challenging job that involves thought. And that to me tells me that actually having a degree of technical polish to my roles is important. And I want a job that makes me feel smart. And you can judge me if you want, but that to me really sums up. You could offer me a very highly paid, very simple job, but if I didn't have that feeling of actually this job's relatively intellectual, I would not be excited by that job. So I'm really happy to see people starting to think about this and what it means for them. And hopefully you don't all think I'm incredibly petty, but that's an example for me. So I'm going to put that in here. There we go, and I'll enter that. Let's have a look at some of these. So financial comfort, challenges, recognition, reward, impact to others. I love that. I think that's a brilliant one. It's that feeling of mission, satisfaction, purpose, and some lovely ones coming in here. Control, that's a great one as well. I think, we live in a hectic, topsy-turvy world, and actually there's a lot to be said for a role that gives you that feeling of control. Some fantastic words coming through. Kirsten, I don't know if you've had a chance to think about this while these words are flashing up on screen. I know you talked a bit about, what matters to you. I don't know if you had one that you wanted to chuck in just while people are filling out the rest of their mentions.
I think mine's probably quite similar to yours, which is intellectual stimulation. So it is just something that's going to challenge me, which I mean, working with people always does. So that's quite something. But there are some absolutely brilliant ones on here. Using my expertise, freedom I saw, a smile, I love that. And actually it was that impact on others. That's the one that would probably be my second choice, actually, on these. So these are fantastic.
Yeah, they are. Thanks so much for your honesty, everybody. So we've had a little think about this. Now, somebody who did a lot of thinking about it was a guy called Nick Shine, and he wrote a thing called Career Anchors. There's a link there, which will make sure we get round to those of you who want it afterwards. If you Google Shine's Career Anchors free test, it will take you there. And we're going to do one of these. Remember I said at the start, we'll do a little canter through, and then you can do it at a bit more time at your own leisure. We're going to have a think about, or you're going to have a think about, which of these career anchors most resonates with you. I'll talk through each one in a minute, and then we're going to have a little bit, then we're going to rank them using Menti, and then we're going to have a little bit of think, I'm going to invite you to have a bit of a think offline about some of these questions on the right, like how are these getting met? What would help me get a better fit? And who could help me do that? And what could you do less of to focus on those areas? So that's what we're going to do now. And I'm going to talk you through these career anchors, and then we're going to vote through them. So I'll just talk through them in brief, and then we'll bring it to life. So technical or functional competence. So that's a bit what I was talking about with my example of, actually, I want somebody to think I'm smart. And there might be a role that puts you in the smart person's club in your mind. You want that technical competence or challenge. For some people, it's this general management competence. Now, general management is not a sexy term for that competency, but this is, I want to run a big team. I want to be somebody who turns up and everybody turns to me for the answers. I want to be that person who actually makes it work. So they're two quite different angles. Autonomy or independence. So actually, I want to express myself. I want to actually have a bit of freedom about how I do things. So actually, many very successful independent individual contributors within organizations, this is a strong anchor for them. I want to not be just a cog in the machine. I want to be a cog. I want some of the machine to turn around me. Thank you very much. One person said in the previous brainstorm about control, and security and stability is a really important one. But I think a lot of us, particularly more new to the world of work people, underplay or undervalue. We get told all the time, be out of your comfort zone, be out of your comfort zone. If you're somebody with dependents, if you're somebody who has got a mortgage to pay, there is nothing wrong with wanting a bit of stability. You might achieve stability by keeping your skills fresh, but actually, that career anchor is really, really important, particularly for those of us with financial or family commitments. Entrepreneurial creativity. So some people love just being a bit cute with how we're going to interact with customers, how we're going to make sure that we make a great contribution to our bottom line. We like coming up with new ideas, coming up with something exciting. And there's service or dedication to a cause. I don't need to spell that one out that much. But particularly in the HR space, that may be a strong for many of you. And then we're getting there. Some people just like stuff to be difficult. People love doing Ironman. People love doing X, Y, or Z activity. Some people like to say, well, I'm going to find the toughest job in the world because what's important to me is being the smartest, toughest, hardest. And just by virtue of the fact that the job is really, really hard, for some people, they'll go, well, I'll do that one, thank you, because I want to prove myself. I want to climb up that mountain. And then lifestyle. So actually, if you've got a lot of things you like to do outside of work, that lifestyle may be significantly important to you. So we're just going to do a little vote on those now, just based on that very quick description. I invite everybody to have a little think. And the voting here, you have to pick which one you want and then spool them through. So have a really long think about your first couple. And then we can move from there. So mine, I'm just listing mine right now. And it does reduce the it does reduce the number that you can pick from. So as you go down, you'll see that list gets a bit smaller. All right, and we'll just do a little vote. And this is one where you may, when you get offline, have a little look at Shine's Career Anchors, do the free test. And let's just wait for this to flush through for everybody. And we'll see where we come. All right. It's funny, I tell you, my bottom one is actually, I do like to express myself, but I put autonomy as the least. And my most I sort of talked about already was that feeling of technical or functional competence for me, and then service or cause. And it's interesting just seeing these, so that they're going to flex as more and more people vote, seeing them come in. Kirsten, again, I'll turn to you while people are doing this. What of those resonated the most?
Autonomy.
Maybe the first couple.
Autonomy. Every time. I think,
right.
I'm not sure why that is, but I think autonomy, and then, oh gosh, I can't remember what I put next.
Don't worry.
Probably the challenge one. Where is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose that fits with your role in that,
yeah.
yours is a very, you have a number of relationships you need to build, you need to profile of a company and the impact we have, but similarly you get to do it in your own way. So I think that's, that's a good indicator to me that you're healthy and have a good fit there. So it's great these are coming through. Now, interestingly, what's at the bottom there, entrepreneurial creativity and general management. Very interesting seeing what's on there. So I don't know what you've reflected on there, but hopefully helpful just to step back. And if you do that free test that you mentioned, that would be great. But similarly, if you just have a little look and a think.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, I do wonder if we'd run this 2 years ago, if lifestyle would have been at the top of that list. Or is that something that's come out from the pandemic when people have realised actually that commuting to the office every day, and I know some companies you've still had to go into the office, others have been able to move to a more hybrid or working from home way. So I do wonder if that's what the big shift is. Oh, thank you, Declan. Yeah, and that's what I just wonder. Lifestyle now is. I do wonder if that's the driving force, or if is that the cause of, not the cause of the pandemic, but is that the outcome from us for working that we go again?
I love that, Kirsten. It's such a good observation, and I think it's one of these things where your view of a work-life balance will definitely have shifted. And when sometimes we only know these things when they're taken away from us, and certainly, we've all had that sort of pressure or challenge. So let's have a look now. What tips have you got, folks? And this is where I'd like to make use of all our brains, really. Do you have to get a better understanding of your career anchors? So actually, what can you do to better understand yourself? So I'm going to type one in here. I'll put one in for here. So we've got some great ones coming in. So when you feel good at work, stop and reflect about why. Yeah, I love that one. Time to reflect on who you are when not in work mode. I think that's really important as well. When you're in the day-to-day and you can only think about what's in front of you. A lot of people who are in mission-led roles it can sort of dominate us. So actually having that time to say, well, outside of work, I'm going to think about this one, on holiday, I have that idle weekend, whatever it is. Actually having that time is really important. Exploration. Sometimes you might not have tried. Get out there, have a little go, have a little volunteer, spend some time with people who are in certain roles. You might find that actually just by doing that and having conversations, it really helps. What makes you get up to start the workday? That's really helpful. Reflect often, work-life balance. So actually blocking that time, I think that's fantastic. Really, really useful. All right, let's have a look and see what else. Where and what do I want from my job? What am I prepared to give? So that's another key part of this, is actually not just what you value, but what your absolute I will not give up on. And a fantastic one there, we talked yesterday in the resilience session about the importance of mentors. A mentor is a great shortcut. It's like the cheat button on your career, day-to-day life. Just find a mentor, someone to use as that sounding board. It's really, really useful. Career journey is a journey lines exercise. Yeah, really powerful. All right, brilliant. Thanks everybody for your reflections and hopefully some helpful tips in there. Really the key thing is remember that sweet spot image. A big part of that is knowing yourself and knowing what you value. Brilliant. All right, thanks everybody. Okay, so we've looked into it and we've looked at the career rankings. We've had a little bit of a judge about them. For the top two, I advise you, take this offline. Are you getting them met now? What would help you get a better fit? It might be that you have your current role, you just have a conversation with your boss and you express that actually what's important to you is learning and development, or what's important to me is stability. So how can I future-proof this role and make sure that I'm in a role that's similar to it and do some joined-up career planning? But what could help you get a better fit? What could you do less of to help you focus? Who could help you? What would you ask for and when? And if you spend even just 10 minutes reflecting on those top two, you'll find you flush out some really powerful actions. So careers anchors, we've looked within, and now we're going to look back. So one of the suggestions that came along was around the career timeline. Now, if you're all comfortable, I invite you to grab a piece of paper, or if you're in front of your laptop, which many of you will be, open up good old Microsoft Paint and just have a go at this. So you're just going to draw back right from where you started your career through today, and don't worry about actually having a historically accurate scaled timeline, but just high point, low point, and do it really quickly now, but then do take that 10, 20 minutes offline to just reflect on it afterwards. And while you do that, and Kirsten, I don't know if you've done one, but I'm gonna talk through mine briefly, and then we'll talk through yours just while, and feel free to just to listen, but really focus on doing your own if you're online, folks. I'm going to talk through mine. Now it starts with legend, because when I graduated, I actually worked in the student union for a year, and I was 21, I think. And you're at that age where you walk around and everyone's a legend, you call everyone legend, and it's like looking back quite nauseating. But I had that confidence, that arrogance when I was young, and I was paid £12,000 for that year. But I had everything a job could want when I was working in that student union. I had the self-esteem of having been elected into it. I had a brilliant work-life balance. I had more disposable income than I've almost ever had, because I had absolutely zero outgoings apart from a little tiny share of a flat. I had it all ahead of me, and I felt on a career high. So I was walking around going legend. And then I got my first job at Accenture, and very glossy company. And I thought, yeah, I'm a corporate legend. I've just got this job. And then I fell off a cliff, because actual real work, as opposed to the work I did in my sabbatical year, is hard. And I was surrounded by really, really bright people, and it hit me, and it took my legs out from under me. And I think that for me, when I reflect back, it makes me think actually confidence and being in an environment where I'm confident and I'm not in competition with loads of people in the same role is important to me. And believe me, if you're somebody who works with Accenture, it's a fantastic organization. So, this is not me bashing Accenture, but my experience of it was that actually I joined and I was quite arrogant, and they did me a favor, really. They brought me back down to earth. And it was, you're not the only fish in the sea. But then I had a tricky first project, but then there was a project called the Global Corporate Card I had, which was fantastic. And I found my feet and I got going, and I got the first promotion point within that company. And I was again riding up on an absolute high. But then remember I mentioned I had that black spot where I drifted, and I didn't know what my dream was, and I just drifted along. Some colleagues of mine had joined a company called Beringa, which was an absolutely amazing place to work. But a few years into Beringa, I got married and had kids, and my priorities changed. And the reason I got trains cancelled was I had so many conversations heading back from a project we had in Manchester. Hello, by the way, to the people in Manchester. It was a great place to work. But trying to get home, and we were trying to plan a wedding, we were engaged, and I just thought this living out of town is not going to work for me. And it really highlighted for me that lifestyle career anchor. Actually, looking back, I was like, actually, lifestyle is important to me. I probably wouldn't take another role that involved heaps of travel. And eventually, I had some conversations with Beringa where I got more internal work, but it was always going to be potential to travel. And I joined LHH. And that's been fantastic. It's brought me closer to my truth. I will never feel as happy about my career as I did when I was a legend, because I had all the things a career could want and my youth. But it's got me close. And there's one more drag through, which is when we had my wife and I had twins 18 months ago, and that would have made any job hard. But again, I reflect, and actually, those around me were a great support to me. I've got a great deal of flexibility, and I think that's helped me reflect on my career, the choice I've made, and I'm very happy with it. So that's my experience, and hopefully, as I've waffled on, you've had a chance to reflect on your own. But I learned kind of 4 or 5 key things just by doing that. So Kirsten, I don't know if you want to quickly bash people through, because I know you've got some, and hopefully that gives people enough time to reflect themselves.
I came at mine in a slightly different way. I've now done this one. I'm going to go and do this one, I think, a bit better, because I realised that mine was all about glamour versus stress. There's more down things there than there are up. So advertising, glamour, stress, it's just pressure, delivery, clients, all the time. Freelancing, which I loved, it gave me freedom, actually, kids, and then getting off the hamster wheel for a little bit, and then I wouldn't say rebuilding my career. I ended up going in a different direction, but I did probably a bit more of a traditional, like, what did I do and when?
Oh, nice.
Then, so again, a little bit different. I wouldn't say I was ever a corporate legend, but it was very much, where's my thing, a quick run up that career ladder, and I promoted myself into a different job at that point, and then up, and it's very up and down. And interestingly, it's only since being at LHH where I've got a bit more of career progression and I can see the path that, and I couldn't work out, is it because like your 30s, I'm probably a bit of a cliche in many ways, but 20s was about getting the experience on the CV, 30s was about, you know, I'm lucky, I've got a family, but about finding something that's still satisfying to me and keeps my brain ticking over, kind of around the kids. And then as they're now, my eldest has just started at secondary school. So Tim, there is, the path changes. Okay, as a twin myself, I know my mum still has horror stories about us. They're generally nice now though. But then as I'm, I am in my 40s now, sorry, I shouldn't make you laugh, should I, or cough? But as now I'm in my 40s, my career's taking off, which actually is quite lovely, because, and like you, Tim, I was a child of the 80s, and again, female, you can have it all. Of course you can have it all. And that's the challenge, which has probably made me reflect more carefully, probably over the last 15 years actually, is wife, individual, wife, mum, and how you kind of, it's not just 2 circles with the intersecting piece. Actually, I find it's the 3, and trying to find that bullseye that kind of makes everything then work in a very beautiful way.
That's a brilliant addition, and I genuinely may update the slide, because I think that non-work part and having it balanced is really, really important, and you've got to have the right balance. So thanks, Kirsten. And it's really helpful. I think you've raised one good point, and then hopefully folk, I'm not going to make everyone go on and share their highs and lows, but hopefully it's been helpful for you all to have a bit of reflection while we're talking. So I had COVID about 10 days ago, so I still got the old cough, even though I'm not transmissible. But if you're somebody, Kirsten, you reflected on your, the duration and timeline and some of the perspective you have now. And I would say, if you're somebody who's maybe a few years into this, and you're at this point where I've got, on my career timeline, I would say, have faith. You will get to a point where you realize that isn't the whole picture and it doesn't define you. So look back and learn from the past and reflect on it. But, there are always possibilities to improve your career. And it might not always be upwards, it might be sideways, but to get to that place of richness. But please do, offline, take a bit of time, look back, you'll be amazed how much you learn. And it's amazing how few people, if you don't prompt them to do it, will think about it in their head. They don't actually write it down and try and flush things out. So please do that. Celebrate the highs. And if you've got something in the past, a great acronym I heard the other day was FEAR, is face everything and rise. So those projects or pieces of work where you thought, I messed that up, right? Don't just ignore it and say, there's them, it wasn't me. Have a real good look at it. What were the things that you can learn from it? What were the things that actually were out of your control? And then you can say, right, that thing there happened. So I had a project about 8 years ago that was a real rough one. And I reflect on it a lot. And I think the one thing we didn't do in that project was we didn't agree an approach. And that high level, what are we going to do and when? And I didn't slow my line manager down. I tried to rush to keep up with them because I was trying to keep up appearances. But having that learning and reflecting on it, I know that will never happen to me again. So face everything and rise. Celebrate the highs, look back, learn about yourselves. If there's stuff in your back past timeline, use this as a chance to flush it out, face everything and rise. Right. So we've looked within with our career anchors. We've looked back. Now what I want to, let's have a think actually. Some of you have been doing this exercise. I'll just give you a second. If there's something you've learned or something you're proud of, let's take a minute to celebrate. What have you learned about you? So I'm going to type in my one. What is the thing that you've learned about yourself that's either important about the past, that you've learned that you want to success? Be kind to yourself. Yes, don't beat yourself up. Very true. What else have we got here? So I'll put mine, which is about getting an approach. Don't be afraid to ask for support. Yes. Learn from my mistakes. Agree how and when to say no. That is so true. Very often it's easy to take a role because somebody says, oh, this would be good for you. This would be good for you. Be true to yourself. Strong enough to dust myself off and start again. Only so much you can do. Yeah. Need to be challenged. So don't just drift, do let yourself come up there. Enjoy learning new things. Yep. So hopefully that's been helpful to look back on that. Do what feels good and what looks good. I love that. Whoever wrote that, pat on the back. I think that's a brilliant one. What looks good? It's your career, and you'll be laughing when you're the one who's actually in a really happy place. And you'd be amazed how many quote unquote successful people, it's all falling apart at home, or they go home and they're stressed every night. You only see what people want you to see. And a toxic one for that, and we'll talk about it later, it's a brilliant resource, but LinkedIn, there's a brilliant quote, which is, don't compare yourself to others today, compare yourself to you yesterday, and what progress you've made. So just, do that. Be resilient. What else have we got? Get to know yourself. Think through the long-term impact of job choices and what it will give you. Best of both worlds, family and career. Just because you have the skills to do something doesn't mean you want to. Also very true. So some wonderful reflections there. Thank you all so much for sharing. Hopefully it's been helpful for everybody to look back. I could spend all day, if we were all in a room together, it's important to celebrate those highs, those learnings. So thank you for doing it. So we've looked within, we've looked back. Now what I want to do is give people the chance to look forward and to think about their strengths and going forward from a place of strengths. And I'm sure being an HR community, many of you will be familiar with Clifton Strengths or Strengthsfinder. There are heaps of stats that they put out there about the importance of a strengths-based approach. And if you think back to the Arsene Wenger description at the start, his strength was statistical thought. Apply that to the workplace, bang, one of the best managers that's ever been. So, and that applies across all domains. So we're going to think about our strengths. Now, we don't have time to do a full deep SOAR stories exercise for everyone, but I'm going to introduce the framework, and I'd like everybody to just take a bit of time getting used to it. Let's have a little think now. If I challenge you, if you say, right, how good are you at understanding your strengths? What makes you uniquely you? And how good are you at articulating them? Where are people? I'm going to vote on this as well. And by the way, you can take feeling arrogant out of scope. If you say you're great at something, great within the bounds of not being cocky. Don't beat yourself up if you think you're actually good at this. Okay, so we've got a bit of a mix. Now, I voted in that red column. I know what I'm about, but I don't have my elevator pitch down. I don't have my, true, authentic, oh, this is who I am. I don't always have it. I've got roughly them. Always want to do better there. And it's interesting, that seems to be where a lot of people have fallen. I'm really sad if you're one of the people in the bottom three. Hopefully that means that you don't feel negative about yourselves. It might just mean that you've not had a chance to reflect on it. But I would say, if you're in that blue or pink column, hopefully this will help move you along. If you're in the red column, hopefully it'll get you all the way over to that yellow of, I'm going to base my career on my strengths. I know exactly who I am. Here's my mission. Here's where I am. Kirsten, just while people are, there's a few more results coming in, where would you say you are on this?
I'm also in the red column, interestingly. I think if you put me in an interview situation where you've got time to prepare and you say, oh, I'm good at this. Now I do wonder, is it because I'm humble, a little bit shy? And if I've worked with any of you who are on this call, then you might think, maybe not. But it is that little element of self-doubt where I think, well, am I that or am I this? So sometimes having someone say to you, great job, you did that really well. You sort of hang on to that and you think, well, I'm going to take that. And pop that in my back pocket, because I know I am now organized, I don't know, effective, a great communicator, whatever it might be. But I think, I don't know, it's one of those where you go on leadership courses and you're asked to describe yourself in 3 words, and you think, oh, okay, give me 10 minutes, and I might be able to come up with 3 words in order to do that.
Yeah.
But it's really hard.
It's really hard.
I also think when you're under stress, which, you know, the last 20 months or so have taught us, that actually we've probably got strengths that are amplified or have been diminished somewhat by, I mean, I'm quite a natural, I love seeing people, I love being face to face. And I've seen a colleague today who I've not physically seen for 20 months. And I've seen him on screen, but it's just been so lovely to just see them in person. So, and I think for me, that's something that, I wouldn't say the skill's diminished, but it's not as important as something else I might have learned over the last 20 months.
Yeah. I think that's very true. You know, it has flexed things, and it has really, for some people, it's exposed things that were their strength, but maybe, you know, there were some areas where they, you know, they now have to rely on certain types of skill. It's been a really challenging time. So let's have a think about strengths. Now, many of you may be familiar with a format called SOAR stories or STAR stories. SOAR is about your authentic story of who and what you're all about. And it's very easy sometimes, if you see a role description that you think looks nice, it's got a pay rise, to say to yourself, well, I do have the ability to influence stakeholders above and beyond within my organization, and get very wooden. And this is about an authentic, genuine story that inside of work, outside of work is you and what you're all about. I'll give you an example. I was on a course that we were running for a client about a year ago, and they had some internal changes coming that were going to be pretty heavy. And we were running a session with the line managers of people, and they were going to have to tell people some news about the restructure. And I asked people to do this. And there was a guy who opened up, and it was actually incredible. He almost had me welling up, but I said, you know, think of a story where you've done something and you think, I went above and beyond. And I now tell this story about how a relative of him had some awful news that they had cancer, and it was quite advanced. And he told this story. He was shot straight from the heart and said, you know, I provided help to that person, and I was facilitating. I said to him, what was he doing? He said, well, they were really stressed, so I looked up everything I could about it, found things that were helpful and less helpful, and I shared with them things that I thought would be helpful information, and I found out how we could get the best help available. And in describing it, he's kind of, he was really emotional, and then he came out of it and he said, right, so I suppose my thing I've learned is I am that person who will go the extra mile for others, dig out all the facts and make things simple for people, and that's my way of helping. And he was somebody who was in an IT department, and he was somebody who I would say didn't come across when we were facilitating the session as being someone who would be comfortable talking about that kind of scenario. But just by doing that story, saying, well, here's what was happening, here's what I did, and it was a great help to my friend, it brought that power. So I'm not going to make anybody uncomfortable and make you share those. But my challenge is that's the kind of thing. Think about those scenarios of your life. What's the thing you're most proud of, that moment where you said, I was amazing that day? And it's not technical things. You have a think about those. Use this format. Think about 4 or 5, the proudest, most proud you've been, not because of the outcome, but because of what you did. And use this format, and that will get you closer to your soul story, your authentic story, and get you from that red column towards that yellow column. And that'll be such a strong base for your career. So hopefully I've harped on at that enough. I'll jump off my soapbox and just write it down. Situation, obstacles that we overcame, actions that you took, and the results. So Kirsten, I don't know if you have any reflections or anything you want to share. Don't feel obliged to, but I like to sort of just check, because I know you've got all that experience.
No, nothing from me, but I am going to go and have a think about this, because again, it's that if you're going into an interview, which hopefully some of this might make you think, do you know what, I'm going to have the courage, I'm going to find the courage, and I'm going to go and ... And actually, it's having those examples to hand that makes it that you know, will stand you in good stead really in that interview.
Yeah.
We'll go and think about it. I will go and write one, Tim, I promise. I'll do it with you by the end of the week.
I'm glad you're taking it offline and doing it rather than rushing it, because it's very tempting to say our skills are and crowbar ourselves into a role that we want to go to, but actually this is about being you and going from there as a base. So hopefully helpful. Please do take the time to do that offline. All right, now, I don't have time to have everybody do their source stories. I do again want to reflect on an achievement that we've had or a moment that we've had. So I'm going to write mine, and I know what it means to me, but just the name of someone you've helped, or the name of, so I helped somebody many years ago called Jody, top guy, and there was a thing that I did outside of the workplace that helped them, and it sort of led me a bit towards working with people. So that's my reflection. What are you proud of? So we've got some people here that empathise with people. We've seen others flourish. They've built a team. They've helped in some employee relations cases. Just take that moment and just have a think about. I'm really proud of the 3 best moments of my life. And don't beat yourself up and think, well, that was just one moment amongst a sea of average. If you're one of these people who felt low on your skill set, celebrate those. Get them to the front. And what else? We've got listening, great listener, solution focused, building trust, integrity, career change. So maybe that was helping somebody to change career. Maybe it was having the guts to make a career change. Got some really, really good ones there. So hopefully that's a good summary of our source stories and where we're at. Making a difference, changing backstory. Great. So I love some of the ones like that, changing backstory, because I can tell it's personal to someone. So really helpful. Okay, I'm going to release you all. If this is feeling awkward for you or you need a bit more time, please do take the time to do it offline. And thanks everybody for your celebrations of what you've been able to do. And I do like the word cloud, but I do find it hard when it jumps around. But don't worry, I think it's the only one that's in. All right. So we looked within, we looked back, we talked about the strength of looking forward. Now I've heard this said before. Direct quote from a senior manager. Actually, it was at Accenture. When we were talking about Accenture's process, which at the time was quite challenging to individuals, mostly in a helpful way. And we did some reverse mentoring. This person said, "Well, I do want to help people, but I help those who I can see helping themselves. And if you come and ask me for help, I'll help you all day. But they in a limited world of time, they can only invest so much in individuals. You can't steward everyone along. It's just not physically possible. So how do you get yourself known as a career activist and seen as a career activist? So think about a few go-getters, people who've really, and it might be a sideways move, but those people. I knew one, her name was Anna Baxter at English, brilliant now. She's, I think she's pushing for director now, and a real star. And she just, she was, the day I met her, she was 21, and I knew she was going places, and there's a few reasons why. She had a few traits, and I'm going to write one of them now. That she had. So drive, limitless energy, rewrite the rules. I like that. I'm getting over here. I'm going to make it happen. That's a brilliant one. Confidence, vocal about achievements. There's definitely a bit of not being shy. I know some of us are repulsed by excess self-promotion, but actually, being known for things is no bad thing. Charisma, yeah, that's often helpful in terms of getting people across. So we've got a few here. I'm going to move it on just because of timing. Here's LHH's view of career activism. Now, LHH's heartland really is, and the roots of the company are in career transition, so helping people who've lost a role get into a new role that really, really best fits for them. And there are a few key strands to those people who we see as successful career activists. And they are as follows. The people who get far ahead or who make a brilliant next move are fantastically balanced across these 3. I'll start on the bottom right, because it's the most obvious, which is self-management. It's very hard in a busy week to actually say, I'm going to block out some time here. I'm going to have a think about actually the next role within the organization, and I'm going to block out, I'm going to do that coffee, and I'm not going to push it out. I've said I'm going to network with someone and meet them. I'm going to turn up, even if it means I have to work a bit later to get my day job done. I'm going to do that little bit of moving to help me get ahead. I'm going to take on that difficult project to get me ahead, to boost myself. So self-management and discipline. Bottom left is about curiosity and creativity. So actually, I'm going to explore. I'm not just going to be doing what's in front of me. I'm going to explore what's new and what's coming up. And we know it's hard to get to where we want to all the time. We might have to flex. We might have to do different roles during points of time. We might have to go beyond our comfort zone. And those people who succeed are adaptable. And they might do a role for a few years where they have to be maybe a tough project manager and get things done. And then they can flex to a role where they're actually interacting with stakeholders and navigating those politics, so they have that adaptability. And people who are there, who have that balance, are typically ones who see being career activists, moving ahead and being seen as career activists. And Anna, who I knew, was amazing at self-management. She had a plan and she did things. You could see her just very subtly, not in a out and out self-promoting way, but going to meet people, exploring, getting things done. She had that discipline. So that was her special strength. So we're all going to have a think now. Actually, are you very adaptable? Are you that disciplined person? And Kirsten, I'll let you answer yours, and I'm not going to put you too on the spot, but if you think back to maybe Kirsten in your 20s, there was that inflection point across glamour and stress, and probably some periods where you were stronger or less strong. Have you got any times or anything you can reflect on? And don't know if you don't, because I got my own.
I think I've always been adaptable, and I think that's simply because I don't know, if just life really. Life taught me how, probably from, awful, but probably from quite an early age that it might not be straightforward. So my parents separated when I was 10. So no, it's fine. Because actually what it taught me was I learned how to plumb a washing machine at age 10 because I was small enough kind of to get behind the back. So there's a whole lot of stuff that I learned. And actually, there was a piece of research that was published a few years later that showed that especially daughters of divorce ended up being and acting in a certain way just because they my mum in my instance had to learn how to do all sorts of things. So my husband hates it because I said, well, I can go and do this, and we get into that sort of blue versus pink job, which is terrible, and I don't do that with my daughter. But I think it is just around that for me, I think it's adaptability because I don't like the word no. So if someone says I can't do something, I think, right, I'm going to go and find a way of doing it or learning a slightly different way of doing it.
Brilliant.
So I think that's me. And also I am just inherently curious. If we're saying, oh, we'll send an email out about something, I said, look, why are we doing it that way? Why does it have, just because it's always been done that way, why does it, going forwards have to be done like that?
Yeah, fab. Thanks so much for your honesty. I can tell you, everybody, I'm dragging our average down for self-management because I'm about a 1 around there. I'm so about what's in front of me. I really have always struggled with that. So, have a reflect on whether you're a career activist or not. Have a think about where you could do more. If you're feeling like you want to move and you go, why isn't this working? This might be a useful reflection for you. All right. Now, I think I'm going to skip this one because I think we talked about it previously about, tips to actually boost your career actives, and there'll be other opportunities to throw in tips. So I'm going to move this on just in the interest of time. But do please take some time to reflect on whether how you stack up against those 3 factors we talked about. Now, one of the main things about being a career activist and moving is branding and networking. And I love this quote from Henry Ford: you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. And I have massive aspirations to do certain things, and you can go to, I could go to a job interview now. Don't panic, but I could turn up and say all these great things I want to do and all these great ideas, but actually someone will go, okay, can you show me on your CV where you've done it? And actually, even before they enter into a conversation with you, if they know you, if it's within your organization, are you seen as being a certain way and understanding things? So that's why we're going to spend a bit of time paying attention to that today. And another great quote: having a brand is not optional. Okay, everyone you know will have a perception of you, and it might be, who's that? You know, and there are so many. We get these people in our workshops. These hidden superstars who are either just so in the day-to-day they don't put themselves out there, or they had one bad meeting and it's all everyone remembers them for. You know, you get these hidden superstars. Or so really, you know, it's on you to manage it. And what I'm going to invite us to do, and I'll talk through these in a minute, is have a think about where we can provide more focus. So I'll start at the top. You know, people's experience or interactions with us. You know, maybe you've turned up to a meeting late and there was a particular person in there. You know, maybe your boss's boss is somebody who actually people don't like, or maybe people love them and you want to get nearer to them. So that kind of kudos rubs off on you. You know, being aware of who's there. So there's that people's experience or interactions with us. Our actual work. So some people, and you see this happen a lot now, I won't name my wife's company, but there are a lot of people there, and this is part of the reason why she left, was they failed upwards. And they were so about managing stakeholders, they got promoted and they moved across, but they left this wake of trouble behind them. And eventually, for some of these people, it came across in the P-Con scores and they got found out. So, you know, actually the quality of your work. Then self-presentation and presence. So not just whether people saw you, the experience of the interactions, but actually that balance of confidence just in a day-to-day that you carry around with you. And then lastly, the external. So actually, do you interact with the industry? Are you getting your network together? Are you actually sucking in input from outside and using those? And all those things come together with your brand. So
Tim, sorry, just before we move on, we've just got a question on the chat, which I have to thank you for asking it, because I have to admit, I wasn't sure what it meant either. Transversal, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that word in this context as well?
Yeah, well, fantastic.
I am merely the mouthpiece for, who was it? For Sarah. So there we go, Sarah. Here we go. We'll find out.
Sarah, thank you for asking. Okay, so transversal, I take to mean actually networking across. So not just following upwards, but actually you get these LinkedIn communities, you get little focus groups, and some people will only go to a talk delivered by a senior person. But actually, going around your peers, going within the broader network and meeting people of your level, they're a really powerful way to actually you can be a bit more honest and open with them. You can get yourself associated with bits of work. You know, it's a really, really useful way of spreading yourself across. So that's my take on it. And that's hopefully a helpful interpretation. So I'm going to put my dot down and just have a little think, where do you want to focus? Because it's very difficult to do it all. And I'd hate for people to leave this and start obsessing about their brand. But what is the thing they can do? And hopefully, well, I'll let everyone come through and then I'll go through. And bear in mind, this is the person with a pink patch behind their wall. I'm going to set my dot. I'll just put mine. Have a little thing. And it's interesting that not many people have put work as the base. I know a couple have. And I would say, if that is you, remember those points we made earlier. Face everything and rise. Don't beat yourself up. Learn from these things and move forward. If it's continuously a theme, have a think about what's my source coin? What's my actual thing that really brings me to the party? And is my role aligned with that? And then it's great to have a little spread. And we won't go too far into that one. One trap people fall into is around stakeholder management. And this kind of plays to Sarah's point around the transverse networking. Some people will think to themselves, right, I want to move into, I've decided my thing is I love negotiating and talking to people and driving bargains. I love that feel. So I'm going to move into procurement. And they'll try and book in a meeting with the head of procurement. And actually, that's not where you want to start, because the head of procurement is going to be a busy person and they're going to have heaps on. So you want to aim for somebody who has that sweet spot between the access they can give you and also their degree of influence. And it might be helpful if you're looking to make a move, actually get out LinkedIn, get hold of an org chart, ask around, and just plot a few key stakeholders where you're going to dedicate some time and effort. And it might surprise you, you may know all these people, but actually step back, have a think about those branding questions and say, well, actually, is this person on board? Actually, is this person somebody who knows me? How committed are they? So just a useful little exercise, a useful little plot. We're not going to do it now, but just have a little think about stakeholders. And I know, Kirsten, in your role, stakeholder management and stakeholder mapping is a huge thing. What kind of things do you do, Kirsten, just in terms of your networking? What kind of tools are you using? There's anything you can share in that space?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you an example from a couple of years ago when we were pitching for a piece of business. So it was a piece of outplacement. I knew that we'd worked with this company globally. And again, LHH is part of a much wider network. So I went out to every single person globally who was connected with this account and said, can you help me? Now, this sounds remarkably simple, but it doesn't happen very often. And actually, I found the person right at the top of our tree who looked after this account globally from an Adecco perspective, who could share with me insights, which countries we work with this company, what things what services they bought from us in the past, how long we've worked for them. So when I then went back to the company in question and said, actually, we've been working with you globally for 20 years in this area, and this area, they really sat up and took notice. So, and even now, I still get asked about this particular account and, can I help with such and such? And my view of it is that when I asked for help, I got it. So now I always think, I like to pay it forward, essentially. So if people ask for my help, I'm more than happy to give it because I received it. And again, if I can make an introduction to someone or just do something, I call it helping, but it is networking. Then I'm more than happy to do it because if you don't ask, you don't get, but also it did benefit and we did go on and win that piece of business. And I'm fairly confident we wouldn't have done quite so well if I hadn't gone out and asked people.
Fantastic, thanks, Kirsten. I think there's something in that around talking to people, networking your way through, and you described it as helping. And seeing as a helping process. Some people think networking is this dirty, brown-nosing thing that is people don't feel comfortable doing it. I would say, when you network, it's just meeting people, being interested in them, interested in what they're doing and having conversations, and getting used to it will make you feel more comfortable with it. And you want to have that confidence of your source story in the back of your mind, but just because you're networking and exploring doesn't mean that someone's going to think, oh my gosh, I met that Kirsten Cole the other day and she didn't know bang on about herself. It's a lot more about showing interest, and then you'll feel much more comfortable about putting your own viewpoint and input forward. So just, the tip on networking is try to not see it as something that's a negative. Actually, it's a real positive. And it's important. You're only cheating yourself if you don't do it. So you may have met some people who are self-promoters, but that isn't you. You've looked back in the past and you feel comfortable with who you are, what you do, your strengths, your limitations, you know what you're all about. Go and meet people and don't feel bad about it. Give yourself a license to do it. Now, talked about stakeholders. Let's say that Kirsten wants to join my team. And I've got to decide, I've got this application from Kirsten. It's an internal application. Am I going to put her forward? And the root of that is going to be trust. Do I really trust Kirsten to do it? Do I trust that Kirsten will be a value add to the team? So think about yourself on the receiving end of your networking and your career conversation. What might make somebody trust you more or less? So if there was a formula for trust, what would be in it? And I'm going to hold off entering mine just because I don't want to put people in. There's a bit of gut, there's a bit of emotion in there, definitely.
I have quite an interesting approach when it comes to hiring someone, Tim, which I did pick up from someone else. So, and because once I used to be on the road probably 3 to 4 days a week, and would quite often go with colleagues.
Yeah.
And my rule of thumb was, when I was hiring them, was if I was stuck in my car on the M25, or insert your motorway number of choice, for say 2 hours or 3 hours, could I bear to be in a small metal box with that person for that amount of time? People do laugh when I tell them the story, and then it sinks in and they think, actually, do you know what? Because I ended up doing a road trip to Cornwall and back from Berkshire with a colleague, and we're with each other for 2 full days, day and night. There was, no escaping this woman. And I have to say that car analogy certainly came into play at that point. So what you could say, the airport, if you were working late with them every night for a week, could you bear to do it? That's what it boils down to.
Brilliant. And it's such a good informal test about whether you have that chemistry with someone. So we've got some great examples here. Proof they can deliver past experience. Would my kids like them? That's a nice one. Are they approachable? Interactions, authenticity, seeing their potential. That's a really good one as well. You might not need them to be at that level. If you can see they've got the potential to get there, really helpful. So thanks to those of you who provided input. Now, there are 2 views on trust. There's an LHH slide which wraps several of these factors in. I've actually substituted that for another one, which is very similar, but it's a bit simpler. So hopefully it'll be a bit easier to interact with today and to reflect on. Have a think about somebody who you would like to network in, or in 5 years' time, you dream of working with them. Do they trust you or not? It'll boil down to this. So, are they credible? So what do they say if you Google it turns out to be factually true? I described previous pieces of work to you, and actually it's perfectly feasible. The way I talk about, I did this piece of organization design and it took 3 days. Well, that is not credible. So, are you credible? I'm reliable. I say what I'm going to do and I do it. And I do what I say I'm going to do. So is that person reliable? And then thirdly, am I intimate with them? Do I know them? So Kirsten, I guess your thing about, do I click with this person? Those 3 things build up our trust in people. And if you think about somebody working, I just don't trust them to go to that next level. It might be credibility. It might be that you don't feel like you know them well enough, you don't have that rapport. There'll be something detracting from that trust. But the biggest thing that will detract is self-interest. And there are a few people I've come across in my career like this, where they're really, really red hot. They're really smart, they're really clever, and they would crawl over you in a heartbeat. That they would be the one to stab you in a meeting. You only meet a few of these people, but that is the great barrier of trust. So have a reflect on that yourselves. And don't get too wound up or deep around it. Just think about, if there's a particular stakeholder who you want to interact with, you're going to go and network with them, maybe you're trying to get closer to them. One of those factors is going to either help you get closer or push you further away. So maybe you've had an incident before where you might have been seen to be self-interested. So maybe go out of your way to help them and be genuinely helpful. Maybe you've dropped a ball, get in front of them, do another project, knock it out the park. Whichever one of those 4 holes you need to plug is, get plugged in. So hopefully helpful and useful to reflect on those. Now, we've looked inwards, we've looked backwards, we've looked forwards. We've had to think about our paths. Now what we want to do is get serious and start talking about planning and really honing in. And there's a great activity that I got put onto by a career coach a few years ago. And I love this quote, by the way: a dream written down with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken down into steps becomes a plan, and a plan backed by action can make that dream come true. So really, really useful. And if I said to you, I'm not going to make you, but if I said to you, do you actually have a career plan? I reckon of 108 people on this call, I reckon about 8 would say they actually have their plan. I'm going to do this project right here because it's going to get me there, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to qualify an X, and it's going to get me where I want to be. I think it'll be 8 or fewer. And one person's dropped off because they're so concerned about it. It's hard, and we've actually got to start getting serious about visualizing what's important to us. Now, I was in a bit of a drift. I mentioned it earlier in my career, and I was looking on LinkedIn, and somebody I joined the company with was MD of X, and somebody else was a director of Y. And I said to my career coach at the time, I'm feeling really flat about myself. I keep going on LinkedIn, and Kirsten Cole's got promoted again, and blah, 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 blah. And they said, right, I'm going to stop you there, Tim. Don't name it, but do your own fantasy LinkedIn profile. And it was one of the best things I've ever done. So don't name a role. Don't open actual LinkedIn in front of you. But just in a quiet moment, and we're not going to do it now, I think in the interest of time, but just do it. Just write down in front of you, okay, without naming my role title, what kind of content would I be sharing and interacting with? What kind of people would I be connected to? What kind of, if I went to a conference, what would that conference be all about? What kind of stories would I share? You know, have a think about really visualizing that role and visualize it for 5 to 10 years time. It's too easy to go on. The next level above me is X. You know, really step away and visualize it. And you'll find it a really useful and powerful tool. And there are heaps of career planning templates out there. You can look them up. If you want to email us, we can send you one. But the key is to really start thinking about that fancy LinkedIn and break that cycle of I must do what's in front of me. You know, really, really have a think. So I just wanted to highlight that and make sure everyone's conscious of it. And then a big factor here is the world's changing. We've talked a lot about ourselves, but actually your fancy LinkedIn for 5 years' time might look slightly different if you're aware of some of the opportunities of changes coming in your organization. So on the right-hand side, you know, what's going on more broadly in your business and how aware are you of that? Changes in the company's strategy, any structural changes, you know, about new initiatives that are coming, new systems that are coming, things your company have come out and said they're interested in. Actually, are you on the all stakeholders call if your company does one? You know, what the key messages, and it's too easy to get into doing the do. So I ask everybody, reflect on what's going on more broadly within your business and then also within broader industry and the external factors. So PESTL's a good way of thinking about things. You know, what are the political messages coming out around your industry? What economic trends are there? Sociological trends? Technology is a huge one. What are the legal changes? Now, I'd say LinkedIn interest groups are a great way of doing this. News Now is a good way of doing this. You know, using networking and talking to people, just getting a sense of where things are changing may open up that opportunity to say, oh, you know, I've just noticed the government are getting big into heat pumps. Now, this may not be you, but, you know, I've noticed that, and that is going to be a growth area. I realize my anchor is about entrepreneurship. There are going to be some startups in that area. I'm going to go and find one. So just, you know, just lifting ourselves out of our organization on our day-to-day. So a question for everyone to reflect on is, to what extent do you have your finger on the pulse in terms of those? And I'm going to, so strongly agree would be yeah, I'm all over it. Strongly disagree would be I'm not there. I've scored mine. And just have a little think about it. And just challenge yourself to say, is there more I could do? Because when you do your fancy LinkedIn and you start planning back from there, actually this will probably reveal to you. Kirsten, I know you're in your role, I guess you're all about this. What kind of things do you do to keep your finger on the pulse?
I read voraciously. So I will pull in from, I read industry publications, so Harvard Business Review. I'm very lucky. I work with some of the, you know, great minds. So get to pull in from their research as well and see what's going on. Also, I read the newspaper, which probably sounds quite an old-fashioned thing now, but the business pages every day, and also make sure I listen to. I'm generally awake at a time when I can listen to the business bit on the radio. So I have that on. I then also listen to podcasts. So there's what's his name? Evan Davis on the BBC. Yeah. He does quite a good podcast. Again, you can kind of skim through the ones you like or don't like. So I tend to go for the normal things. And just, again, things that might be a bit left field, but I just enjoy reading them. I don't know, because of the advertising, the marketing thing, I read Campaign, which is the advertising industry's publication. But again, I deliberately read an opposing view from my own, so I can see things in around. And also I get to talk to lots of clients from lots and lots of different industries. And again, they're all telling me, you know, some things are the same, some things are very different, some things, you know, huge chasms in what you would expect.
Great.
So that's, I think, in a nutshell, Tim, that's what I do.
Thanks, Kirsten. You raised a great point there, which is, you know, trying to get a broad view and not just, you know, cherry pick just the things you want to hear. So that's really, really helpful. Now, I'm mindful of time. There's one more thing that I want to make sure everyone is set up for, and that's getting ready to actually have those conversations. So we'll blast through this, and then we'll set you on your way. Are you a great career conversationalist? So just have a little think. Excuse me, everybody. Are you very good at networking internally? Are you good at actually getting out there externally? Do you have your elevator pitch down? You know, are you there? Now, we've sort of covered that off before, so I'm hoping that tallies. And I don't know how many of you have done interviews recently, but are you good at them? So we'll just have a quick reflect there. And I'll just gather this, I'll scrape off the first few votes because I know people have got it low. But just have a little think about that. And next thing we're going to do is just have a look at some things that can trip us up or that can really help us. So we all know these. You go into these and the basic logistics, I know we said 70-30, but this is the 30%. Do you make eye contact? Do you make too much? Do you blink? Do you sit near or far? There are all these different factors at play, especially in an online environment. There may be things that surprise you. So my one challenge that I just wanted to talk to here was, and it'll make you feel uncomfortable as hell and you want to delete it, but film yourself. And we had to do it, Kirsten, do you remember the sales conference a couple of years ago? We were out in the company sales conference, and we all had this challenge to film ourselves, and it was toe curling. But my goodness, I learned a lot. Don't beat yourself up about it, but you'll definitely learn something. So, Kirsten, I know your day, your lifeblood is talking to people. Any brief tips you've got?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things I learned probably very early on in my career was, this may not come as a surprise, I did a lot of amateur dramatics in my teenage years. So the ability to walk on stage, we had to do a lot of improvisation. So that ability to think on your feet came, I wouldn't say easy, but it's something I learned how to do. And also in my first proper job, our receptionist was a resting actor. So he did some work with us around presentation skills. And I think the thing, the fact 20 odd years later, I still remember this, was when you're speaking, make sure you've got that inflection, but also when you're getting to the end of a sentence, say, internal voice, I pause and I breathe before you then move on to the next one. So it's not gabble, 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 gabble. It's more measured. So it just comes across, hopefully, a bit more like you just sound a bit more confident.
I love that. It's a brilliant one. So thank you for that. Thank you for that closing tip. And I'm sure many of you have these things. We all know these things. Have a little reflect. And if you feel you want to push yourself out of your comfort zone, far better to notice something when you filmed yourself than when you reflect back on an interview. So we're nearly home, folks. And thanks to those of you who stuck around for that extra minute or so. We won't do tips because of the interest of time, okay? But what I do want to do is this last one, which is very simply, before you go into any conversation, what do I want this person to think or realize before the conversation? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? And if you take just that 1 minute before going into a careersy kind of conversation to do that, you'll find it just pushes everything in the right direction. So a nice, simple closing tip there that hopefully will be helpful to all of you. So we're now at the end. I think there'll be a feedback survey that will do the rounds. If you'd like to talk about any of this, please do drop me your personal note, just firstname.surname@lhh.com. That's our email addresses. And I'll just invite everybody, just as you're closing, just have to think about that one thing that you're going to do. I know you're going to leave here and go and be busy. What's that one thing that maybe this evening or on an idle moment on Friday? I'll give you space for 3. But what's it going to be? I can tell you mine is going to be. So I've got mine, I'm going to submit that. All right, push development, brilliant. Yeah, it's not all about the lateral movement. Have a career conversation. Strength assessment, definitely. There are heaps of those free online. Make use of them. Talk to others about your strengths as well. Find time to reflect. Use it for your team. Yeah, absolutely. We really want this to help everybody. So if you want to, take some of this on the road, very happy for that to happen. Communicate more. Think about your strengths. Fantastic. All right. I'll just give it another minute for others to call out. Kirsten, just while people are closing, anything you want to say in closing, or any other tips that I've I know I've spoken a bit more than I did yesterday, so I'll give you a bit of a floor time.
No, thank you. What I would say is I've taken jobs over the years where I thought, really not sure about this, but I always say there's two things: is how would I feel if I didn't say yes? What do I, what will I learn from this? What do I think I'd miss out on? And generally, if it scares me, I would probably say yes, because a little bit of fear is no bad thing going into a new job. But also, I think the one thing I'm going to take from this, I think I tried to put it into the phone, it may not have worked, is I'm going to go and create a career plan, because why not? I haven't really had one. But just to say to everyone out there, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your ears today and listening and your participation, and look forward to hearing what you choose to change, I suppose, about whatever might come next for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And when you're all chief executives, give us a call.
Yeah, please. We'd love to hear from you.